Well, hello again, everyone. It is Rob Ryder on Sunday, October 29th, 2023. And today, enlisted Ascension and the military human resource record, which, as it turns out, is like the most important record that there is to an enlisted person. To an officer, too, but I'm sticking with the enlisted for this recording. And it's a record that contains the official military personnel file, the OMPF, that they tell you to go get from the National Archives when you want to get your records. But the OMPF is only a part of the military human resource record, which, they don't want to give you. At least I've not been able to get mine. And so if you're a member of the enlisted, and you have a copy of yours, or were able to get your military human resource record, if you could send me an email to courtofrecord@aol.com, I'd like to discuss it with you and see how you did it and so forth and so on. So let's get on with it. I am Staff Sergeant Robert Allen Rutluski, U.S. Army, veteran, soldier for life, but was never discharged, so don't let them take your rank from you. I'm also known as Rob Ryder. My email address is courtofrecord@aol.com. And you'll find me on YouTube at Rob Ryder, ROBBBRYDER. Yes, with 3 B's. Okay, give me a second here and we'll get rolling. Just a second. I guess I forgot to mention. And this thing about enlisted Ascension. I really couldn't find a definition from the Army, but the Coast Guard defines Ascension as the process of establishing pay and personnel records when a member comes on active duty. And so, as we'll see, we should be able to access our military human resource record through this system called iPERMS. It's I with a small I, and then PERMS, uppercase. That's the way they do the acronym. And, that would be if you're in the military, if you're a retiree, if you're a veteran, whatever your status is, you should be able to access your military human resource record through iPERMS online. And when I tried, it said that my record was empty. And as we'll see, that it says that upon your ascension into the military, you should be able to have access to your military human resource record through iPERMS, which basically would mean then, if this is the definition, that the process of establishing pay and personal records when a member comes on active duty is that somehow the Army isn't seeing me on active duty, that I've ever served in active duty, even though I've got a DD-214 that shows I served over 8 years. So, it's a problem. We got to figure out how to get it fixed, because we're just going to read regulations now and see what they tell us, and go look at your oath of enlistment. It'll tell you that, you're, as a enlisted person, you're responsible to make sure shit's done by regulation. And that's the book, right? So if we could get these people to do it by the book, we would have access to this information, and I'm going to show you why it's important. So, okay, hang on again. Okay, and obviously, since I'm in the Army, I'm going to be using Army regulations to show the things I'm showing, but I will show you that it is talked about also in the different branches. You're just going to have to do a little research on your own to see if you can find the exact regulation. And as I was putting all this together, I had come across these regulations now. I just want to show you a couple of points that, solidify in my mind certain things that, it's good. It's just good to know, have a rock solid foundation. So one of them is, in this Army regulation, 635-8, separation, processing, and documents. Let's see, it says page 16. On page 16 of this thing. 16. It says preparing separation documents. The DD-214 summary of soldiers' most recent period of continuous active duty. The DD-214 is not intended to have any legal effect on termination of a soldier's service. So I've been told before, because I have a DD-214, that I'm no longer in the military. Well, that isn't true according to this. It has nothing to do with what your service is. We're still in the military, even if you have a DD-214. Don't somebody bullshit you. And this one, let's see. Processing personnel for separation, Army Regulation 635-10. It says on page 11 that the DD Form 2A Reserve, which is an ID card, right? Right now, if you're in the military, you got a DD Form 2 with no initial behind it. But a 2A is the red reserve one. So a DD Form 2A, each soldier being released from active duty who will still have a remaining service obligation will be required to complete a DA Form 428 application for identification card under Army Regulation 640-3, paragraph 2-6. DD Form 2A, Armed Forces of the United States Identification Card, Reserve Red, will be prepared during the pre-transition processing by the servicing ID card issuing facility. Members or soldiers will be advised that the DD Form 2A must be in their personal custody at all times during their remaining service obligation. Well, I never got one. Did anybody ever get a red DD Form 2A that didn't actually, join the reserves? So I'm prior service. My first 3 years I went in, got out. I had technically 4 or 5 more years then that I would have been required to carry a DD Form 2A. But we never filled out a form. I never got an ID card. A friend of mine, Dana, he's Navy. On his DD 214, it says he was released to the Naval Reserve, but he doesn't have to show up. He doesn't have to go anywhere to do anything. He didn't get a freaking ID card. Right now, people did get these ID cards who got out and then actively joined the reserves or the National Guard or something like that. But if you just went in, did your 3 years, got out, you were still supposed to get an ID card. I don't know anybody that did. Right? And because this regulation says you're supposed to, and the fact that we don't means that the United States is in violation of the Geneva Convention, which says all members of the military have to have an ID card. Also in violation of the Department of Defense Law Award Manual for the same reason. Okay, so those weren't directly to do with what we're going to talk about now, but because I had found them, I wanted to be sure I talked about them. This is a biggie right here. I mean, this is a big freaking deal. Right? Army Regulation 635-10. Just go to page 11. And page 12 is about, okay, that I took care of. Right? And there's the proof that you have to have an ID card. But the regulation we're going to look at mainly here is this one here, Army Regulation 600-8-104, which is the Army Military Human Resource Records Management. Right? The AMHRR record. And then they just put, for Army, they put an A in the front of it. So for the Army, it's the AMHRR. Coast Guard is the CGMHRR. I think the Air Force just puts an F in front of it. But, they're all, every branch has got this military human resource record because it's prescribed by the Department of Defense for all the various services. And in this thing, it says, this is right from the beginning. Right? The Army Military Human Resource Record Purpose. The naming convention, AMHRR, is an umbrella term encompassing human resource records for soldiers, retirees, veterans, and deceased personnel. Anybody who served in the military got one of these. The AMHRR contains military service-specific information related to a soldier's career that includes, but is not limited to, the official military personnel file, which is the OMPF. Financial-related documents, well, those would be good to see because those aren't in your OMPF. In your OMPF, that's the thing that you get when you fill out the SF-180 form and you send it to the National Archives and they send you your records in an envelope, just a big pile of papers. Not any real rhyme or reason to them. Right? But that's the OMPF. But it isn't your MHRR, or in my case, AMHRR. That's, the OMPF is just part of it. But you also got finance-related documents and non-service-related documents deemed necessary to store by the Army. Now, just to show you, the current list of required documents in the AMHRR is a list that contains 332 pages of frickin' different kind of documents. Everything from, military Army achievement medals to critical language incentive pay, right? Anytime you talk about pay, that's what we want to know. Where's our pay? Civil institution academic evaluation reports, enlisted evaluation reports, Article 15 for sex offenses, all sorts of Article 15 stuff in here, things to do with pay, all sorts of stuff. It's just, it's way too much to go through. But it's much more than what is in your official military personnel file. And as this says, the AMHRR is archived in the Interactive Personnel Electronic Records Management System. That would be the iPERMS. And the Interactive Military Personnel Electronic Management System, secure. Right? So iPERMS with an S and iPERMS with a hyphen S. Which have been identified as records management application for the Army. The AMHRR is a historical and authoritative source of authentication of veteran and service-related benefits, entitlements, and services. We need to read that again. The AMHRR is the historical and authoritative source for authentication of veteran or service-related benefits, entitlements, and services. So if you want to get everything that you're due because of your service, you have to have your AMHRR to review. And they don't want to show it to you. At least I haven't been able to get mine yet. There is no maximum number of documents. There are documents in the AMHRR that reside outside the OMPF, like your finance records, and are not part of the permanent record that is transferred to the National Archives and Records Administration. So when you go to NARA with a SF-180 to try to get your records, they're going to send you your OMPF, but they're not necessarily going to send you your AMHRR. And as it turns out, well, you shouldn't have to go to them anyways because it's supposed to be on iPERMS, right? The AMHRR is archived in the Interactive Personal Electronic Records Management System. That's what an Army regulation says. So I don't care what Human Resources tells me or someplace else. I'll go, ask for your records from National Archives, which is what they tell you to do. No, the regulation says it's supposed to be on iPERMS, and I want to see it on iPERMS. And I'm going to show you. When I go to mine, it says, hey, it agrees that I have an AMHRR. It just says there's no records in it. Okay, let's see. The folder structure, non-OMPF folders within the AMHRR, subscribe 4-1. Okay, non-OMPF documents within the AMHRR assist the Army in preserving valid information on a soldier for a specific period of time. Upon expiration, documents contained in these folders will be purged and documented in the system audit logs. The OMPF is defined as the permanent documentation within the AMHRR that documents facts related to soldiers during their course of his or her entire Army career from time of ascension into the Army until final separation, discharge, or retirement. The purpose of the OMPF is to preserve permanent document pertaining to enlisted appointment, duty, stations, assignments, civil training, civilian and military education, qualifications, performances, awards, blah, 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 blah. Emergency data, separation, retirement, casualty, and other personal actions. So myself, I was technically supposed to have been separated according to my DD 214, but there's nothing in there that shows I was separated. There's no separation order, which is a requirement under the regulation that I was, allegedly separated under, that there's supposed to be one, and there isn't. Okay, the OMPF remains in Army control for 62 years from the soldier's final separation date. And on and on and on. Hang on a second. Okay, the ORC, which is the official record keeper, or record custodian, I think it is. Yeah, official record custodian. For the regular Army and the reserves, is the Chief U.S. Army Human Resource Command, Army Personnel Records Division. So every service branch is going to have somebody who's the ORC over your records. The ORC is to serve as the authoritative source for record and document filings into iPERMS and iPERMS-S, while facilitating document transmission and storage from various field locations and systems into the AMHRR. So it's his job to make sure your records are in there. It's your job to check to make sure they're there, and that's the guy who's supposed to put them in if they're not. Okay, then certain people got certain duties, which that's how she works. Privacy Act, information records contained in the iPERMS are governed under the Privacy Act. And it says, it goes on, identifies information will be used, and Privacy Act statement. Let's see, official records designated as access control managers. Access guide. Soldiers are authorized to access their complete records of all files without restrictions. Excellent. Right, so even though it's protected by the Privacy Act, you have access under the Privacy Act. Ascension of first-party requesters. First-party requesters are defined as individuals to whom the record pertains, including soldiers in the following categories: regular Army, USAR, ARNG, retired, discharged, or veteran. All those are soldiers. Soldiers for life. Soldiers may access information in their iPERMS file at any time after ascension into the Army. So you shouldn't have to go to the National Archives or ask anybody else to see them. You should be able to access them on iPERMS, which is a computer-based system. All right, access to individual records iPERMS is automatic upon ascension. Access to individual records in iPERMS is automatic upon ascension. So if your records aren't in iPERMS, like mine aren't, then I must not have ascended into the Army. And as we saw how it's defined by the Coast Guard, right? Coast Guard defines ascension as the process of establishing, paying personnel records when a member comes on active duty. So it's like telling me, well, you're not on active duty. I've never been on active duty according to iPERMS because they ain't got no records for me. Doesn't matter, I got them in my alleged official military personnel file. Official records custodian responsibility to maintain the records as an official government record in iPERMS and iPERMS-S, and to create, maintain AMHRR management program. Well, he is, derelict in his duties. Now, I pointed all this out a couple years ago to the Inspector General for HRCC, and they told me to go to the frickin' National Archives to get my records. So now I'm going to take it to, if you watched my last video, civilian aides to the Secretary of the Army, there are such people, and I wrote something up to sent it to my CASA, as they call them, which I haven't heard from yet. It's the second one I sent them I haven't heard from yet. But, right now I'm just doing what it says to see what happens. Okay, and then just really quickly, 4-1 was the additional folders in the Interactive Personnel Electronic Records Management System that aren't in your official military personnel file. And they include your DA photograph, finance records, finance restricted records, deployment mobilization, administrative, and personnel records review. All right, so there's all sorts of records, and the main ones are the finance records. All right, contains documents that support pay. Well, that's what I want to see. Because if you signed a DD Form 4, which you did if you enlisted in the military, you signed one of these babies, re-enlistment, enlistment document, Armed Forces United States. Notice this says Armed Forces United States. Now, if you have a discharge certificate, go find it and look at it. It's going to say that you were discharged in the Armed Forces of the United States of America. Well, that isn't who you have a contract with. You got a contract with the Armed Forces of the United States. And on this thing, it has, under for all enlistees and re-enlistees, right? I understand there are many laws, regulations, military customs would govern my conduct, requiring me to do things under this agreement that a civilian does not have to do. I also understand various laws, and some of which are listed in this agreement, directly affect the enlistment re-enlistment agreement. Some examples of how existing laws may affect the agreement are explained in 10 and 11. I understand I cannot change these laws, but that Congress may change these laws or pass new laws at any time may affect this agreement. Okay. Well, what does this agreement do? Well, as long as you're under the agreement, you're entitled to receive pay, allowances, and other benefits as provided by law. Now, as far as your obligation, it says right here, it talks about 10 U.S.C. 506, right? I understand that I can be ordered to active duty at any time when I am a member of the DEP in a time of war. My enlistment may be extended without my consent for the duration of the war or for 6 months after it ends, right? So that's, 10 U.S.C. 506. Let's go look at that real quick. Where are you? There you are. Let's read the law. Right? Armed Forces, Title 10, United States Code, Section 506. Got the authenticated bird from the Government Publishing Office, which means this is the law. And it says an enlistment in the regular Army, regular Navy, regular Air Force, regular Marine Corps, regular Coast Guard, in effect, at the beginning of a war, or entered into during a war, unless sooner terminated by the President, continues in effect until 6 months after the termination of that war. So if these conditions exist, the only person that can terminate you before these dates is the President, which means you got to have something in your freaking records that says the President relieved you of your enlistment contract. But both the Korean War and the Vietnam War were proxy wars of the Cold War. And they actually give a Cold War certificate that shows that if you served from like 1946 all the way to the end of 1991, that was considered the Cold War period. Well, before that ending happened in 1991, they started this new thing called the Persian Gulf War. And according to 38 CFR, blah, 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 it says that the Persian Gulf War is still ongoing. So, like myself, I enlisted in 1979. So I enlisted during the Cold War. So now I'm already extended until that's ended by, something that ends it. But before it ended, a new war started called the Persian Gulf War. So then I was covered under that. So in other words, once you're in forever. You're a soldier for life. We're just not getting all the benefits of that classification. And this document also has your oath of enlistment on it, where it says, state your name, full legal name will be put in there if you have a copy of yours. Mine's got Robert Allen Retluski in it. Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States, not the Constitution of the United States of America, against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I'll bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and I will obey the orders of the President of the United States, not the President of the United States of America. So if you go today and look at the Constitution, it's being used by Congress, or the pocket Constitution that they hand you, and you go to Article 2, the very first sentence will say that the executive power resides in the President of the United States of America, which is different than the Constitution that's used by the military and the military court-martial manual, which says in there that the executive power resides in the President of the United States. They're using there are two different constitutions being used. Anyways, mine says President of the United States. And the orders and officers appointed over me according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Okay, so whatever I do has to be according to regulations, and that's what this AR, this one here, AR 608-104 is. It's an Army regulation. It says this iPERMS, that the AMHRR is the authoritative source of information, and then it has to be maintained in iPERMS. All right, because this is one thing you can't get past. The AMHRR is the historical and authoritative source for authentication of military and service-related benefits, entitlements, and services. Well, then I need to see it to see if I'm getting mine or not. You need to see it to see if you're getting yours or not. And that as a first-party requester, right, defined as individual whose the records pertain, soldiers may access information in their iPERMS file at any time after ascension into the Army. We saw that the Coast Guard defines that as whenever they set up your records for your pay and purpose establishing pay and personnel records when the member comes on active duty. So, you should already be there. And then the Department of Defense, under Military Human Resource Record, right, the AMHRR, says what records make up Ascension. All right, so this is for all the different branches. Standard Military Human Resource Record content. Ascension information, that'd be the DD Form 1966 and the DD Form 4, and officer appointment documentation. Right, well, we looked at the DD Form 4 just a second ago, and the DD Form 1966, those are both documents filled out from the very beginning. Like the DD Form 1966 is the thing that your recruiter started filling out the day you said, yeah, you wanted to go in. And the DD Form 4 is the thing that you ended up signing while you were at MEPS. Well, those documents are your Ascension documents, and I have mine, and yet I can't get my record. So, if you can get your record, I'd like to know about it. So let's say you wanted to try to go see your record. What's this guy talking about? Okay, if you're in the Army, you go to Human Resource Command, right, under iPERMS Access. And you'll see it says View the Army Military Human Resource Command, or Human Resource Record, through iPERMS. And by accessing the iPERMS website, you may use a DS logon. This is the preferred method for accessing your record. To request a DS logon, click here. For DS logon customer service support, contact that phone number and da-da-da-da-da. Okay, well, I had done all that before. And, you'll end up at a page like this, iPERMS, where you can say, well, I accept. It says soldiers, retirees, and veterans without a CAC, right? Which is the kind of what your DD Form 2 is. It's a CAC. Can review their record using DS Logon. Okay, well, that would be me. So I go to DS Logon. I say I want to log on. And you have to have done all these things to get to this point, right? You got to have a DS logon, so I have one. Notice I had Robert A. Ritluski. I didn't put that in there. They put that in there. I put Robert Allen, and they made it Robert A. Got to do all these things, and you end up, myself, getting this login error. The iPERMS application is unable to locate any documents pertaining to your career in your Army Military Human Resource record. So they're saying I have a record, there's just no records in it. Then I must not have ascended, according to the system, on active duty. So I have to get that figured out. That's where I am now. I'm getting all these things figured out in my head. What am I do next? I'm just showing you where all this stuff comes from. So now if you want to get your AMHRR or find out what's in it, right, just do a Google on AMHRR, required documents list, and you'll see something like this, or AMHRR required documents list at 10/29/2023. They update this thing daily. I mean, they keep exact track of what's supposed to be in that record, but they won't give it to you. And so if you served in a different branch in the Army, just to show you that these other branches have things that talk about this, here's the Coast Guard Military Human Resource Command record section. Right? If you Google that, you'll find this page here, the United States Coast Guard. So if you serve in the Coast Guard, well, Google Coast Guard Military Human Resource Command, Military Resource Records section. And see what comes up. Marines, Human Resource and Organizational Management. All right, the Civilian Human Resource Office support designated service commands, delivers comprehensive human resource management services for appropriate funded civilian personnel by da-da-da. Well, that's for the civilians. What good is that going to do you? Let's go to this other one. Well, how about this? Here's a Marine Corps order. 1070.1. Better follow orders. Subject, official military personnel file. Right, and in here I'll talk about it's part of a file, or there's things in another file that aren't in this file. In fact, what did it say exactly? Let me go back, because I think I pulled it out. Under that order. The MCTFS electronically maintains data regarding pay and personal information. In some cases, if the information resides in the MCTFS, the documentation information will not reside in the OMPF. Well, that's the exact same as the Army's. Yours is the MCTFS electronically maintained system. Right? Marines wanted to have their own name for it, so there you go. Right? It exists. Let's see if I can find that. Where was that at on there? Yeah, there it is on page 9 of 29. The MCTFS electronically maintains data regarding pay and personal information. In some cases, if the information resides in the MCTFS, the documentation information will not reside in the OMPF. Well, don't argue with it. Have them show it to you. And here's the Navy, right? Military personnel records. Records Management Policy Branch, located in some building, is responsible for policy and maintenance of Army official military personnel file. Well, you're going to find out they're responsible for the whole damn thing, right? This is where you start, right here. When you find your file, don't find your file, whatever it is, let me know what you found out at courtofrecord@aol.com. Now, I did notice this. They have an ombudsman, right? So maybe contact the ombudsman if you can't get your information. The Navy has an ombudsman, where the Army has a CASA, right? The civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army. The Navy has an ombudsman. Well, maybe they can do it for you. And then finally, the Air Force, by order of the Secretary of the Air Force, right? Department of the Air Force Instruction 36-2608, Military Personal Records System, which covers a lot of the stuff I was just talking about the Army, right? Creating and managing military personnel records, handling commanders or supervisor assigned personnel information file, yada, yada, accessing Air Force military human resource record. Well, that's what you want to do, right? So there you are. Let me know what you find out. Okay, so the reason I'm harping on this idea of the Ascension, right? Again, I go to mine, try to go to iPERMS, which I should be able to do according to regulation. There's nothing there. Well, there has to be there, or there's a problem with my Ascension on active duty. And the reason that's so important is because under Title 10, United States Code for Correction of Military Records, 1552, it says that the Secretary of the Military Department may correct any military record of the Secretary's Department when the Secretary considers it necessary to correct an error or remove an injustice. Except as provided in paragraph 2, such correction shall be made by the Secretary acting through the Board of Civilians of the executive part of that military department. The Secretary of Homeland Security may, in the same manner, correct any military record of the Coast Guard. All right, so what that's talking about is this Army Review Board's agency, which has all these different boards under it, and you got the Army Board of Correction of Military Records, right, which is the place they would normally want to send you to get your records corrected. But if you can't get access to your whole records, how can you have them corrected? Right? Well, that's the thing about this 1552, because it said except as a number 2. Well, number 2, it says the Secretary concerned is not required to act through a board in the case of a correction of a military record announcing the decision that a person is not eligible to enlist or reenlist, or is not accepted for enlistment or reenlistment, or announcing the promotion and appointment of an enlisted member to an initial or higher grade, or decision not to promote an enlisted member to the position of a higher grade. Such correction may be made only if correction is favorable to the person concerned. Well, if you're not ascended to enlist, then apparently there was a problem, right? And so these are problems that the Secretary could fix without you having to go to a board. If you could just get the Secretary's attention put on it. And so, like I said, the Navy, they have an ombudsman board. I didn't check to see if the Air Force has one, or Coast Guard. But, is there some way to circumvent the system to shine a light on the issue that you can't see your frickin' military human resource record? Like I said, the Army has this thing called civilian aids to the Secretary of the Army. And so I've sent something to mine, and I'm going to go ahead and read it now, but I'm basically done with the video. You don't want to listen to me yammer on with this, you don't have to. But, I like to make a public record of this stuff. So on 10/24/2023, I sent this to Jason Allen, who is a CASA here in Michigan. I request Secretary of the Army correct my records in accordance with 10 U.S.C. 1552A2. CASA Allen, I have found errors in process or failures to follow regulations that have resulted in my records requiring correction by the Secretary of the Army acting without a board in accordance with 10 U.S.C. 1552A2. Hey, we just looked at that stuff. Where it says Secretary concerned is not required to act through a board in the case of correction of military records, Allow me to explain. In 2021, I came to understand that the Army Military Human Resource Record, the AMHRR, is an umbrella term encompassing the human resource records for soldiers, retirees, veterans, deceased personnel. The Army regulation specifies is the authoritative source for authentication of veteran and service-related benefits, entitlements, and services, and that we soldiers, retirees, and veterans are required to review our AMHRR yearly. I didn't point that out, but it does say that somewhere that what your duty is to review your record, make sure it's right. I attempted to access my AMHRR via the Interactive Personnel Electronic Records Management System, that'd be your iPERMS, where Army regulation specifies the AMHRR is archived, which resulted in my being denied access and instead given the reply, iPERMS application is unable to locate any document pertaining to your career in your Army Military Human Resource Record. That's a slap in the face. I also filed an IG action request, case DX210760, with the United States Army Human Resource Record Resources Command for my AMHRR, which was effectively denied. I didn't really talk about that, but I did that back in 2001 trying to get this, and they told me to go, get the records through NARA, the National Archives. I have attached a screenshot from iPERMS web portal, the DA form that I was talking about. I gave all that stuff to him. It's worth noting the iPERMS acknowledge I have an AMHRR, proving I am in the system. Why not my records? Army Regulation 600-8-104, Army Military Human Resource Record Management, prescribes the policies governing the Army Military Human Resource Records. I have included it as an attachment, but in order to make the report, I have referenced various statements from it as well, from numerous DoD instruction manuals pertaining to records. The first AMHRR is outlined in paragraph 17 of Army Regulation 600-8-104, from which came the following facts. The name convention AMHRR is an umbrella term encompassing human resource records for soldiers, retirees, veterans, deceased personnel. The AMHRR contains military service-specific information related to the soldier's career and includes, but it's not limited to, the official military personnel file, finance-related documents, and non-service-related documents deemed necessary to store in the Army. So all those are things outside of the OMPF. So where are they? The AMHRR contains records outside the OMPF held by NARA. The AMHRR is archived in iPERMS, and the AMHRR is the authoritative source for authentication of veteran or service-related benefits, entitlements, and services. The OMFP is defined as a permanent documentation within the AMHRR that documents facts related to soldiers during the course of his or her entire career from the time of ascension into the Army until separation, discharge, and retirement. Well, I've ascended then because that's my OMPF, and it has my DD Form 4 and my DD Form 1966. We saw that was covered here on this thing, right? DoD Instruction Manual 133608 says these are your Ascension information documents. So if you have your official military personnel file, you got a DD Form 1966 and a DD Form 4, well, that's the proof that you ascended. I don't know why it's not on then that iPERMS will say there's no records for me, unless there's an error someplace, which apparently there is. Right? So, and that's why I want to get the Secretary of the Army to fix it. Then we go on to these other things where the personnel, who has access. I already talked about those things. CASA Allen, according to 2.7, access to an individual record in iPERMS is automatic upon Ascension. I'm unable to find any Army definition of Ascension, but Coast Guard defines Ascension as the process of establishing paying personnel records when a member becomes an active duty. The DoD instruction 130402 provides procedures for entrance processing, personnel data collection requirements for Ascension information required on selected DoD forms to initiate an update of the military human resource record. Further, HRC does have an Ascension management branch with the mission to generate and shape the enlisted inventory by managing the job codes, MOS Ascension targets, and training seat programs to meet the Army's needs. And so I had just found this out recently, so I'm going to contact this Ascension management branch. They do have an email address, and say, hey, how come I don't have no records? That's next week's business. Finally, DODI 133608, standard military human resource record content, list resources of Ascension information. The DD Form 1966, the DD Form 4, and this office appointment documentation. Now, I do want to point out that it just talked about that, right, in this here, that that was one of the things that they could fix. Announcing a promotion or appointment of an enlisted member to initial or higher grade, decision not to promote, There's every good chance that when you left the military as, left active duty as an enlistee, that they made you an officer in the reserves. We're just not getting credit for it. And it's impossible to point this stuff out because, hey, I can't see my freaking file. If I could see it, I could tell you if there was something wrong. But so to summarize, I have a statement from HRC that iPERMS application is unable to locate my, and it did have capital I iPERMS and not lowercase I iPERMS, like, the way that it shows in regulation. So this capital I iPERMS application is unable to locate any document pertaining to my career in my AMHRR, such as those that make up the OMPF and considered Ascension information. I have an Army regulation stating that access to individual records in iPERMS is automatic upon Ascension, which means I should be able to see it, but I'm denied access and informed no records are in my AMHRR. I have a DoD instruction specifying source of Ascension information as the DD Form 4, DD Form 1966, that apparently are not in my AMHRR, and HRC has an Ascension Management branch with a duty to execute Ascension policy. Additionally, according to DODI 130402, USMEPCOM, which is the people in charge when you go to the MEP station, shall manage the DoD virtual gateway within the command's reporting system for DD Form 4's preparation, the oath ceremony, reporting Ascension enlistments into military services. So that's who was responsible for putting my DD Form 4 and my DD Form 1966 into the system, but they're not there. So did they forget to report my Ascension? How can iPERMS claim my AMHRR is empty when documents such as the DD Form 4 enlistment, DD Form 1966, are mandatory accession records that should have been reported by this acronym, USMEPCOM? My DD Form 4, DD Form 1966 were provided me in a reply to the standard Form 180 request for military personnel records for my OMPF, but no record or final separation, discharge, or retirement were provided, which are also supposed to be in there in your official military personnel file. How can NARA have an OMPF to send me, and I'm told that the iPERMS application is not able to locate any documents pertaining to my career in my AMHRR? Is iPERMS insinuating that by the record I've not served on active duty. How could my financial records have disappeared? Casa Allen, this situation is FUBAR. By Army regulation, the AMHRR is an authoritative source for authentication of veteran civilian related or service related compensation, benefits, entitlements, and services. How am I to correct an error that would deny me benefits and entitlement if I'm denied access and inform my AMHRR is empty? What good does it do to file a case with the Army Board for Correction of Military Records if the records that may need correction are concealed from me? My AMHRR is empty of any document pertaining to my career. Then the USMEP did not report my ascension to active duty, making it appear I have not accepted for enlistment. My DD Form 214 has numerous errors, including using separation code JBK, a code associated with a bar to reenlistment, even though my enlistment code RE1A allows reenlistment. And it was issued in absentia as if I was AWOL or in prison. And yet, according to iPERMS, I never served in active duty. My DD Form 214 uses the name Rytlewski, Robert Allen, while my DD Form 4 uses Rytlewski Robert Allen with no comma. And in effect, Rytlewski Robert Allen, DD Form 4, never received a DD Form 214. Other document in my OMPF used the name Robert A. Rytlewski Robert A. This situation had been caused by the Army's using multiple styles and names to identify an enlistee on records. Well, of course it could. That's the idea. Right? If you look at your records, you have a name where they use a middle initial name, and they use your name backwards. They use your name backwards with a comma, without a comma. These are all different forms of name, because if you were doing a sort just on the name, then it would only pick up the name that was used. And not all the other records that, are tied to your social security number, which, and one of these regulations said that, your social security number is the number that ties all your records together, regardless of the name. According to 10 U.S.C. 1552A2, any error that would make it appear I was not eligible to enlist or not accepted for enlistment or announcing the promotion or appointment of enlistment member to initial or higher grade or decision not to promote an enlisted member to a higher grade can be corrected by a secretary without board involvement. Whatever the reason for the absence of records in my AMHRR, it is wrong. It must be corrected. I must be provided my AMHRR and all veteran and service-related benefits, entitlements, and services I am owed. I need the Secretary of the Army to cut the Gordian knot and see to my relief. Be advised that the concealment of records will prove itself to be an Armed Forces United States-wide problem affecting all enlistees and a contributing factor to the suicide rate and homelessness of veteran service members, making those involved in the continued cover-up an accessory to their murder. This cannot be swept under a rug, so please deal with it the full force of the Secretary of the Army. And I had to blank my stuff out, unfortunately, because YouTube will say give it away, private information. So that's it in a nutshell. All that to tell you that we got some stuff that we're supposed to get that we're not getting, and it's because we don't have access to our AMHRR or MHRR, depending on your branch, or whatever they called it, because everybody had a different name. But that whatever it is the historical and authoritative source for authentication of veteran service-related benefits, entitlements, and services. So whatever it takes to get it has to be done, because that's the only way you're ever going to know what you're owed. And it's not just the official military personnel file that was sent to the National Archives and Records Administration. So them telling you to fill out an SF Form 180 to get your records isn't good enough. It's not what it says to do. Nay, nay, nay. It says that, let me find it here. All right, here, that the AMHRR is archived in the Interactive Personal Electronic Records Management System. It didn't say anything about going to NARA. It's in iPERMS. And everybody has access to their iPERMS. All right, 2.7, access to first-party requesters. A first-party requester are defined as individuals to whom the records pertain, including soldiers in the following categories: regular Army, USAR, ARNG, retired, discharged, or veteran. Soldiers may access information in their iPERMS file at any time after ascension into the Army. Access to the individual record in iPERMS is automatic upon ascension. Well, how come I can't see mine? Current serving soldiers are authorized to download, make copies of AMHRR at this website there. So, the regulation says what the regulation says, and according to my oath of enlistment, I have to do what the regulation says. Everybody has to do what the regulation says. So we need to make them do what the regulation says. If anybody gets it done, please tell me by sending me an email to courtofrecord@aol.com and tell me how you did it. Let's see if we can get it figured out and tell the rest of our enlisted brothers and sisters, and give what you're owed because of your service. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Y'all have a great rest of your weekend. And, weekend's almost over, but I'll let you know what happens when something else happens. Till then, take care. See you now.